Welcome back to the 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show. My name is Wayne Kimmel, managing partner of 76 Capital, the sports tech venture capital company. And on this show, I interview top sports entrepreneurs, athletes, and executives who are shaping and many times changing the overall sports business industry. And you can subscribe to our show on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and our 76 Capital website. Today, my guest is Dave Rebuck. I am really excited to have Dave on the show. He was recently named a special advisor to our 76 Capital portfolio company, IC360, which is the integrity, compliance, and education company for the gaming and sports industry. Dave's career has been marked by significant contributions to the legalization and regulation of the internet gaming and sports betting industry, and especially all the things that he did for the state of New Jersey. He was appointed by the New Jersey Governor Chris Christie in April of 2011, and he then led the New Jersey's gaming response to some of the most critical developments in the gaming industry, including the launch of internet gaming in 2013 and the landmark Supreme Court decision in 2018, which struck down PASPA, which then brought on sports betting, which now is across 39 states in the U.S. plus D.C. And under his guidance, New Jersey became a national leader in online gaming and sports wagering. Dave, welcome to our 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show.
Thanks, Wayne. Pleasure to be here. Good catching up with you again. And look forward to the conversation today. And hopefully we can give some people some information, make it challenging for them and educational too.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you have so many amazing stories. You've done so many incredible things in the gaming industry. I guess to get started, maybe one of the first things we do is after you retired and left the DGE, you decided to become a special advisor with IC360. What attracted you to do that as one of the first things that you did after leaving the DGE?
Well, again, I did retire in March, and didn't take very long thereafter to know that I had an itch to get back involved with some of the really important things that I thought needed to continue to be done and improved upon as our country moved forward into new forms of gaming, particularly sports wagering, online gaming, internet play, technology, how it's so important to moving forward with protecting citizens and the companies. And when I was approached by other companies. I was approached by individuals, and some of the ones I can't work for because I essentially am barred because I, as a regulator, was responsible for their being licensed in the state of New Jersey. So IC360 just merged after I left. Two other separate companies came one, new company came about. Our ethics people at the state of New Jersey authorized me to work for them, that I could. And I was really excited to continue to dialogue with them because, again, they're touching upon many of the elements that a state regulator or somebody who's overseeing the gaming area really wants to see done well. And I was very familiar with some of the individuals, not many of them in that company, but some. And I knew they were very talented. And the items you touch upon, compliance, education, AML, technology, they have a track record that is really good from their previous companies and have a lot of talented people. So it's an exciting time. And certainly whether you're a company that's engaged in gaming, whether you're a regulator needing help, whether you're a RG company or an RG need in a state, these are all very important aspects of making sure that gaming continues to be run well in your jurisdiction. And so you need talented people to help you. And really happy to be an advisor and help them move forward in ways that are going to be even better for everybody I just mentioned.
Well, certainly the team and I are really excited, that you're involved with IC360 and think that, your experience, over the years of really leading, the country's, leading organization to making sure that everything was truly on the up and up and being that, that regulator is something that's so important to the industry and moving forward. And when you think about, some of the different areas that, you mentioned sort of the compliance side of things. What are some of the important things that you think that you need to do to make sure that everything stays on the up and up, and that when we continue to have more and more capital and more money that's being wagered, and more people are learning to the regulated side of this industry, like what are some things that you are going to focus on?
Well, I think we all know, for those who are involved in the gambling world, that gambling is continues to be a growing industry. In the United States, most states, through their constitutions, except for a few states, prohibit gambling. It's not allowed to occur unless it's adopted by a legislative amendment or some type of constitutional referendum, like in New Jersey, that the people decide they want to be able to participate in some form of gambling. And that's, as we saw how it played out with sports wagering, as you mentioned, there was a tsunami explosion across the United States in essentially a 4 or 5 year period. And when you look at that, primarily you have two forms of companies you're working with. You're working with gambling entertainment companies or tribal lands that are running retail environments and doing a really great job and looking to have better products provided on their premises through the use of technology, just like any other company. And then in the online world, you have this new entry of companies and entrepreneurs from all over the world who are essentially technology companies that dabble in providing a gambling product. And so when you look at regulating those groups and you look at everything, the operators of the casinos, the operators of the B2C companies, the operators of the B2B companies, the affiliates, they all have to come through and get licensed and regulated and have a privilege to engage in providing gambling within their jurisdiction. That's a big job. That's just the licensing side of the house. And then the regulator has to be assured that the products that are being developed, the technology that's being developed, not the old systems that were manual systems that have been tried and true and approved over 10s and 20, 30 years ago, but the new technology is not fraudulent. It works and protects consumers, and it delivers a product a way that is visioned to be delivered to allow for everybody to be satisfied, all the stakeholders be satisfied that it works. And that is challenging because in the online world, I can assure you that most states and most regulators were ill-prepared for this new technology because our skill set was based on the retail environment, the day-to-day manual systems that were tried and true and put into play.
Well, you've had some incredible success. I mean, one of the big things I think is that I've learned, hearing you have shared a lot of stories with me, as well as hearing from some of the other people who have worked with you, is that, you're a real believer in technology. You're someone who really believes that it's so important. And I'd love to just sort of step back and hear the Dave Rebuck story. I mean, I love, you shared with me on our ride home from Pittsburgh, with Eric, Weiss and me, and we were talking about, in 2011, when the governor appointed you to this new role, what that was like and what you were doing before that, and just over to share a little bit of your story and how much has changed over the last several years, and how many things that you were actually responsible for making a lot of those changes.
They were great years, and I had great staff and I had great support from both Governor Christie and Governor Murphy. And both of those two governors, when you add that essentially almost 16-year period of time with the gaming industry in New Jersey, they couldn't have had two better governors who supported what they did and certainly supported me when I was there to deliver on the promises that they were making. So, I mean, we had a very outstanding atmosphere to build upon and work upon because you had this really strong support from the executive branch of government. And we had a number of very engaged legislators who understood the needs of the gaming industry to grow over time and not be stagnant. and gave essentially, where needed, legal tools to make that happen through the legislation that was passed. And of course, the citizens voted for it through the referendums that were passed. So, there were some tough times there. And probably what you're referring when I first came in, the online gambling was not on the horizon yet. Certainly sports wagering hadn't started yet. There were discussions when I was in the governor's office about having those type of new diverse products available in the gaming industry in the state to support and diversify the offerings of the casino industry and bolster them, and the racetrack industry, who at that time, if you go back to 2010, were each experiencing significant challenges to be successful in the future because their monopolies, for a better word, had ended. Casino gambling existed virtually in every jurisdiction on the East Coast. There were a dozen casinos on our border that surrounded the state of New Jersey to block basically any kind of regional access into Atlantic City. If a person didn't want to go to Atlantic City, they had plenty of options right smack on our borders of New York, Delaware, and Pennsylvania. I guess you could come in by sea. There was nothing there, but that was not a very popular course to get in. So the challenges that we were first faced with were really brought to the attention in the governor and the governor's office and Governor Christie through the industry, who was arguing that they were prevented from being innovative. They were prevented from engaging in new technology, and they're prevented from expanding their operations to adapt to new opportunities in the casinos. It's not online gambling or online sports, but just the work that they had to do. They were overregulated, and it's almost like we had a mini group of, now that it's Elon and Vivek, come in and certainly come in and look at things in a way that's totally different than it was in 2010 when Governor Christie came into play. Total regulatory reform in the gaming industry. Essentially, the legislature changed how the gaming industry was regulated, and we worked for almost 2 years in changing every single regulation that was in play for the bricks and mortar environment to understand why those regulations were in play and what new regulations, reformed or modernized regulations, could come into play that would allow for integrity, but at the same time be adaptive to the new reality of casino gambling after 40 plus years of experience in the state of New Jersey. So to this day, I've always said, Mike, that's the most important thing that I'm proud of, that we changed the infrastructure that allowed for stability, even though we lost casinos, they closed, but built in stability, and then gave us an opportunity to look down the future to what new forms of gambling could be provided to diversify the product and give our casinos an advantage over neighboring casinos, because they now offer new games, new technology, new offerings that the competitors didn't.
So you basically like paving the road for innovation. I mean, that's what you did.
The road for innovation is a good way. And again, you mentioned some people there. I had staff that they were the leaders, not me. They'd bring things to my attention, whether it be attorneys, investigators, technology people, and the word got out to the industry very quickly. And then we had this rash of people coming in, obviously B2B companies coming in, offering product. And you know what? A lot of it was really good. And the ones that weren't, well, guess what? They didn't make it. But I think New Jersey became recognized in the United States as the place you wanted to go to first to get your product developed and be institutionalized and workable in the casino itself. And we had what we called the New Jersey First program, promised turn things around in 15 days. And we did.
You always talk about your testing lab and how, how that really was such an important part of the overall.
Well, very few states have their own lab. Those who created the Casino Control Act in 1970 8 in New Jersey created a lab because they wanted to have all the slot machines and games checked to make sure they couldn't be fraudulent or cheating, the consumers. That was the best decision they ever made. And we build upon that lab, and they have new additional responsibilities. But the success of the lab under the leadership that I inherited when I became director was only beginning to become known. And you had individuals like Eric Weiss and Bob Moncrief and Shane Lascari. I mean, those names right now in the gaming industry in the United States, they're legends. Everybody knows that they have skill sets and delivered on looking at products in a professional way, a reasonable way, an innovative way. And more importantly, when there were problems, they told the company what the problem was and what the company needed to fix. So, and they didn't get paid for it. They essentially were advocates for New Jersey because we wanted those products to come in. We wanted them to become operational because we knew the industry needed it. And you can only, anybody that has any sense of business and commercial operations and how technology has changed operations of businesses. And these are big businesses. These are financial institutions. Yes. We needed it and we got it done. And the staff that I mentioned, those leaders and the attorneys that worked with them, like George Rover and Lou Rigacki, Mike Golub, they understood it better than I did. All I would do is ask questions and be the judge and the leader of the orchestra. And if they convinced me, we did it. But if they couldn't convince me, then they knew that we weren't going to do it until they brought me something that we had confidence in that was going to work, because we did not want scandal. We did not want failures. And if things didn't go the way you thought they were going to go and work, at least that you took a step back. I did anyway, as the leader, and said, I don't know why it didn't work this way. It doesn't make sense, but we're going to correct it and we're going to fix it. But it wasn't anything we missed in the due diligence piece of trying to understand how the product was going to work and what it was going to deliver to what we needed it to deliver for the integrity of what we oversaw, which is the gaming industry. So heated discussions, long nights. If anybody thinks that the state of New Jersey employees are 9-to-5 workers, during many of these times, there were some late night meetings that the industry was getting their money's worth, because the industry essentially pays for all the costs of regulation. So taxpayers didn't have to worry, because essentially not a single dime from the general revenue comes to support the Division of Gaming Enforcement.
So are there any stories that you can share? You were right there. You were right in the middle of the lawsuit that Governor Christie said, like, it's just crazy. Why can only the state of Nevada have sports betting?
Right.
And you were sitting there with him and just what was that like? And can you share some really cool stories around that?
Well, again, it was a team effort, and I always compared it to a baseball team. But there's no doubt in my mind that the catcher of that team and the person that knew what to call for the pitchers was Chris Christie. Chris Christie had a mindset that we're going to win. And everybody involved with the litigation, again, he was named in the lawsuit. I was named in the lawsuit. Frank Zinzuki was named in a lawsuit. We wanted to win, and we wanted to win in a way that we knew, and the governor knew, and his advisors knew. And Ted Olson, God bless his soul, recently passed away. Brilliant pick by Governor Christie to lead the litigation. Came up with legal arguments that were just, as an attorney, was like, man, I never saw that one. I was seeing it in a different way. And And again, we lost. We lost, I think, 7 different times before we got cert before the Supreme Court. And when we got cert before the Supreme Court, and we started the litigation in, I think, around 2013. So 17, no, it would have been 18. No, 17 is when we got cert. And we knew that was our final chance. If we lost in the Supreme Court, we're going to lose. It was not going to happen. And as you mentioned, we were in December and Governor Christie's essentially last month in office. Chris Perino was the Attorney General. Governor was there. We were all in the Supreme Court chambers listening to the arguments and not knowing what to expect. And it started off, Supreme Court Justice Kagan came at us hard. Not what came at us, came at Ted Olson hard. Made some good points. Second person up was Sotomayor. She came at us hard. Olson did great, but you've hearing these questions and began to say, well, we're 0 for 2. And then Justice Ginsburg had a prepared written question. Very good question. Olson handled it well, but she didn't ask any follow-up questions. She had been, kind of under the weather at that stage of her career. And so I thought, well, we're 0 for 3, but it could have been worse. And then the next person up with Justice Breyer, who was an expert on interstate commerce. And he asked a question that was framed in such a way that it made the state's argument. It made Olson's argument. And Ted Olson looked at him, never forget, and said, "Thank you, Justice Breyer. I wish I could have presented it the same way you just asked that question." And so we had a little more confidence that, wow, we might get Breyer. And I'll never forget, I saw Breyer reach over, he's sitting next to Thomas, and whispered in his ear. Thomas smiled, and I thought, whoa, wait a second here. We're gonna get close now. And then from that point on, it just turned, and the rest of the justices went at in our favor with questioning and put a lot of pressure on the other side, both the Solicitor General as well as Paul Clement, who handled themselves really well. But you could tell by the phrasing of the questions that our points had gotten through. And when the hearing ended, because it's all very short, it's only about an hour and a half at the most by the time you leave the building, we were on the front steps of the Supreme Court, and Governor Christie is there with Ted Olson, and the press is asking all sorts of questions. And I'm standing next to, at that time, Senate President Steve Sweeney, who was a major ally. And even though he was in a different party, but he was clearly an ally in everything that was happening in making Atlantic City better. And question to Christie was, well, you did really well today. Supreme Court rules in your favor. How soon before you can take the first bet? And I'm like, oh my God, that's just a stupid question, because the Supreme Court really isn't going to make a decision here for a while. And Governor Christie looked at him and said, "Oh, we'll be able to take a bet in 2 weeks." And I was like, I looked at Sweeney and just went, "Whoa, 2 weeks. We got some work to get done because we're in trouble. We're not ready to take a bet in 2 weeks." And from that day on, our staff did nothing in the Division of Gaming Enforcement other than focus primarily on getting the rules and the regulations ready to go for the first bet, both online and in a casino, as well as what there had to be legislative changes made that Sweeney knew he had to do. And I'm very proud to say that after the Supreme Court ruled in our favor, within the legislature turned around a new law and in a month, and then we took our first bet that week.
Amazing.
it was all because of the coordinated efforts of everybody trying to make sure that we knew what we were doing. We are going to have a good product. And again, we were only taking retail bets at the time because the online people were nowhere even near ready to submit product. But we did it. And to this day, I always tell new states coming on, if you're going to get pressure from your legislature, just do this. You've regulated gaming so much in your life, you can have a sports book, retail sports book, open and operated, and you can copy everything New Jersey did. And I guarantee you can get up and operating within a very short period of time. Online's different. That's also new. But the retail sports book, people can come in. If they really want to wager, come to your casino and they'll be able to engage in sports wagering. And so again, and then a month later, in our case, I think it was August, probably 6 weeks later, DraftKings and at that time, FanDuel, now Flutter, took the first wager online. In August. And from there on, our goal was to surpass Nevada, and we blew past them. And I'm so proud of what we did in New Jersey to have a quality product that is seen that way, not only by our citizens, but throughout the country.
Well, certainly, congratulations on making that all happen. And I think what's been really interesting, at least from my vantage point, is in hearing from so many people across the country that really did look to you and your team as the experts. When they wanted to think about what they were going to do in their state, they came to you.
Yeah, we did. We didn't charge them a bit. We gave them everything. At that time, Governor Murphy was in charge, and I think Governor Christie would have said the same thing. In order to make this work throughout the country, which is really needed, you need a lot of stakeholders to do it right. So give them everything you have. Don't charge them. And we give them everything we had. You copy it. You think you can do it better? God bless you. Just tell me if you think you're doing it better, because I'm going to watch it. And if it is, I'm going to take from you and do it differently in New Jersey. It's a copycat industry. We all want it to work. And I mean, most of the regulators I worked with were very appreciative, and they wanted to do the right thing too. And people just didn't understand that this is a new legal industry in the United States. And you didn't have a lot of experts that you could turn to and say, well, you're going to run our sports book for us, or you're going to run our oversight of sports wagering. I mean, it's a business model that you might have known how it worked because it was illegal, but it wasn't going to work that way in a legal environment. So, there was a lot of challenges to everybody to get up and running in a very effective, efficient way. And so a lot of what we did, we had to be coordinated, in some ways collaborative, and it had to be comprehensive because you were constantly getting bombarded with new ideas on new product to offer to people through sports wagering, right? That the industry wanted. I mean, they wanted more product out there. It wasn't just college basketball and pro football. It was every sporting event that was possibly known to man, and then we prohibited things like amateur sports in high schools and things. But that's different. And then we had to work with the leagues. We had to smoke a peace pipe together and have them understand there's integrity issues here. We got to work together. We got to share information. You have information. We have suspicious information. We got to work together. You don't want a scandal. We don't want a scandal. And they were very good. Give a lot of credit to Adam Silver from the NBA. He was the first executive director to really, I think, in my mind, saw the opportunities, in addition to the challenges that need to be dealt with, but the opportunities. So it wasn't just, no, we can't do this because it's just going to be bad for our business.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I mean, the leagues who were fighting, to not have, sports betting, then all of a sudden, the minute you could have sports betting, they jumped on the other side. And then, as you said,
Wayne, it really took a while because there were some hard feelings. I mean, you fight adversarially for 7 years, and in their cases, most of them, you're dealing with some of the biggest institutions known to man in the sports wagering world in the United States. The NCAA, every major league, hockey, basketball, football, baseball, the Justice Department. I mean, we had all these billionaires on one side fighting the rebels in New Jersey, and there were hard feelings. And I give them credit for being responsive to our outreach efforts to work together. And I would say right now, many of the groups I just mentioned, as long as we continue to work together and have good relationships, good personal interactions, sharing information, we're going to be just fine. Will we have problems? Absolutely. Will there be things that happen that we're disappointed in? Yeah. But there's not going to be as many as if we weren't working together. And there's a lot of good people in the industries I mentioned. And as you know, with IC360, we're working very closely with the NCAA, the colleges, the conferences, and that's such a massive organization. And quite honestly, the turmoil that the NCAA is going through right now, not just with gambling, but with essentially their structure, how the NCAA is going to be dealing with things like transfer protocols, NILs, paying players, losing lawsuits left and right over the last 4 years, antitrust lawsuits. And the NCAA has a lot on its plate. And we have to continue to work with them to give them confidence that in the gambling world, that there's safeguards in place if they adopt them to reduce the risks of being caught with scandals or misinformation or mistakes that they don't want to have either. So when I look at the major leagues, again, they have revenue that is and commitments that goes far beyond what the NCAA has today. But the NCAA is got 3,000, well, not 3,000. They got about 1,000 institutions, right? And of those thousands, Wayne, probably how many of the colleges probably have Division I sports wagering on them? A couple hundred, maybe.
A couple hundred, yeah.
And so many of the institutions that are in the NCAA really have nothing to worry about as far as gambling. Nothing. I mean, it's mind-boggling to me to think that they're worried about gambling at a Division III school.
Well, what about some of the things you talk about, whether it's from the college side of the situations or from a professional side? What are some of the things that you think that they could implement? Certainly with IC360, there's a product, what Proabet is looking to do, but are there things like that and other things that you would certainly recommend them to start to make sure that they're implementing to keep everything on the up and up?
Yeah, there's technology products out there that you and I know that track in order to gamble online, okay, the amount of information you have to submit to create an account is mind-boggling to John Q. Citizen. We track your devices. We track you personally. We know where your money's coming from. We have fraud prevention systems come in. We have payment processing protocols put in. Credit cards, debit cards have mercantile codes that, have to be verified that it's your money. AML, anti-money laundering systems are in play. So the amount of information on the bettor or who is betting is recorded and saved in New Jersey for 10 years. 10 years. And as we know, most college students are under the age of 21 and therefore aren't allowed to gamble on their own. So therefore, not only are they not allowed to gamble, but more than likely, if they're gambling in illegal websites or illegal offshore sites, or using a proxy of some sort to run their play. And we have systems that will watch that. So you can see some strange things happen in an account. It begins to make you wonder. And part of this, in working with college students and youngsters, I call them youngsters. I mean, I think I'm old, but young adults, is to educate them and to have a very strong educational program for all college students, not just the students who are athletes, or in what I call now athletes who are students, because most of the Division I athletes spend more time preparing, training, and playing their sport than they do in class and studying. Okay. I'm sure the NCAA wouldn't like to hear that, but I think that's commonly held belief probably by most people who watch college athletes now. So those educational steps need to occur to ensure that someone who is just learning about the risk of gambling and is not allowed to gamble is doing so in a way that they have more and more information at their disposal and know what risk to protect themselves from. And let's not forget about crime, because certainly young people who can impact the outcome of an event will be targets from criminals for bribery or blackmail. And they need to know where to turn when they are threatened with that type of activity. So there's a lot that goes on in education here. And I think there are programs being offered that by IC360 as well as others. They're going to help the educational institutions prepare. And that's not even talking about dealing with kids who are under the age of 18. So I'm really focused primarily, I think, with college athletes and working with colleges and universities to protect our students through education, as well as, and I've written on this before, the colleges have a duty when their students are threatened with violence or social media harm to act. And I've written to schools in New Jersey and basically told them, we're a law enforcement agency. You have a responsibility, fiduciary responsibility, to investigate those threats and determine if they're criminal or if they're just civil violations to your codes of conduct. And if they are criminal, then you're going to report it to us, because we, as I just said, have all the tools in the world to track down the bad actor who may be using the media, social media, to threaten somebody or harass somebody who's a gambler. And so this working together with the NCAA in ways that we can do this will be beneficial for them. It'll be beneficial for educating people to act civilly, or in a way that they're disappointed with the outcome of an event, that they maybe grow up and find different ways of dealing with it instead of threatening to kill somebody who missed a field goal, right, to win the game.
It's been amazing having you on our 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show. Dave Rebuck, an advisor to our 76 Capital portfolio company, IC360, as well as the legendary director of the DGU in New Jersey. Dave, I one last question for you, sure. and I kind of guess where you're going to go with this, but when you think about, you've talked about technology, you talked about innovation, talked about how things have changed so much just within the last 6 years from a sports betting perspective. Where do you think the next 5-6 years, what is it going to look like in the future, from a gaming perspective?
I'd say right now the country's kind of in a little bind here, because the entrepreneurs are way ahead of the governments that want to encourage gambling to be regulated strictly, thoroughly, comprehensively. And why I say that is that the power of the internet to reach people through product development and delivery of purchasing services and goods is just the entrepreneurs have genius skills that just blow me away. And, we're struggling right now in the gaming world to try to get your handle around that. And why I say that is, there's a couple areas here that are not regulated as gambling and are clearly involved, pushing the envelope right on the edge. Is it gambling or not? And the governments are struggling to get their arms around it. And one area is what I call fantasy sports play. Fantasy sports play, I've been through this for almost 10 years now. Is it a game of skill or is it gambling? All right. My point is Dave Rebuck's world. It's not a game of skill anymore. It's gambling. It is clearly directed on sports. The only way you play it and play it successfully is through the internet. Prop betting on the internet, prop betting on fantasy sports now is occurring in multiple states. It's a gateway to sports wagering, and it should be regulated at the same level that sports wagering is, because it will build in all these added protections. And now, instead of 21-year-olds engaged in gambling, you have 18-year-olds engaged in playing fantasy sports. And they're learning how to gamble playing fantasy sports. And how do we educate them? How do you work with them so that they don't make mistakes and don't think that, this is an area of no risk. The other area is what we call social casinos, sweepstakes casinos. Obviously, gambling. Anybody that looks at it, I know there's legal loopholes. They're being argued. Okay, do we go to court and fight these things out? I don't know. There's cease and desist orders that are coming from certain states. There's other states that are being very aggressive against it. Some states don't even know what it is. So you have this now new form of internet wagering. We'll leave it at that. Even if you don't call it gambling, it's internet wagering, because you will lose money. These companies aren't going to be out there giving money away. And then you have the last area, which we work very diligently with other states as well as the feds, is going after the illegal market. Clearly the illegal offshore market, very powerful, very sophisticated, very good at what they do. I mean, we all know they're in every state in the United States. And so people who believe they're in a state that doesn't allow for gambling, I can assure you, I'll give you go and type in www.bovada. You will be able to open an account and gamble on sports. Mybookie.ag, stake.us. I mean, you just put a query in your browser. How can I put a sports bet in Utah? Boom, up comes that. And you can. So I think, to answer your question, Wayne, and if we don't get that under control with all these new forms of wagering, and you got the regulated, very strictly regulated market, and you have this huge loophole that is available to anybody who has access to the internet, we're going to have some issues in the long term. What's going to happen? Why would anybody come and get licensed when you can offer the same product unlicensed? And nobody wants that. So we got to get that under control. And it's going to take a lot of work from government agencies working together, as well as federal government. And the Indian tribes have been very actively engaged in opposing these new forms of wagering, social casinos and sweepstakes. And so I think there's significant debate to get our hands around what we have today. And if we do that and get that right, then in the future, the sky's the limit.
Right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on our 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show. Really appreciate it. And thanks to all of you for tuning in. You heard it from the guy, the person who truly has done it all these years to make sure that everything has been safe and allowing us all to have fun in the gaming industry. So thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Wayne. See you in the future. Take care, buddy. See you later.
Take care.